Hello and welcome back to another Sims 4 Create Sim video featuring LaKan from the Apothecary Diaries. LaKan is first introduced as a possible shady character in the anime, but as you continue to watch his story, your mind will change how you view this character. LaKan is the military strategist who is described as an ally to no one, not even his employer, the Emperor, which the Emperor, much later in the anime, jokes around and acknowledge that he doesn't want to anger LaKan by possibly making Mao Mao a consort, even though he was just joking about making Mao Mao one of his consorts. He did acknowledge that he wouldn't want to anger her father, who is LaKan. But we first get introduced to LaKan. He started to visit Jinshi after hearing about him buying out someone from the Verdigris house. During his first visit, he shared a story of a brilliant courtesan who only shared her talents that many wanted, and he also fell in love with. Jinshi thought of Mao Mao while he was sitting there listening to LaKan describe the courtesan and her behaviors. But the story ended in with LaKan's questionable thoughts on how he could make the courtesan his own, and left Jinshi with a question of how you can decrease the price of a courtesan. Later, Mao Mao answered the question after Jinshi asked her, and the answer was pregnancy. Jinshi then knew that LaKan was Mao Mao's biological father, and LaKan visited Jinshi again later on, and he expressed how upset he was that Jinshi was able to buy out Mao Mao from the Verdigris house because Mao Mao had a lot of debt that she kind of built up with the Verdigris house after allowing Lihaku come and visit one of the princesses. So she incurred a lot of debt that she was unable to pay back due to her leaving the palace. But so Jinshi ended up going and rescuing her by paying off her debt, and then she returned to the palace, but in another section, working under Jinshi. And this is when LaKan started to visit Jinshi, and at that last visit that he had with Jinshi, he just expressed the fact that he was just upset that he came in and pretty much stole her from him right up underneath his nose. Some time passes after this conversation and a lot of other events that, if you want the details, which are really, really good, definitely have to watch the Apothecary Diaries fully and straight through. But after some time has passed, Mao Mao uncovers an assassination attempt upon someone that is very important. She didn't know who the important person was, but she just knew that this important person, someone was planning to assassinate them. As she was trying to prevent this from happening, she was struck by a guard with the club and falls down the stairs in the anime. She gets up and she continues to plead with the guard to let her through so that she can save the important person from being assassinated. And then from behind, you hear LaKan's voice. He appears in the back and he states to pretty much allow her to go through on his order, and that he will pretty much take any blame that occurs from letting her through. And he also voiced his displeasure in the guard harming Mao Mao in the process as well. She was led through. She rescued the important person, which turns out to be Jinshi. And right before she loses consciousness, because, she got hit in the face with the club. And then also while rescuing Jinshi, her leg got injured. So she has this large cut on her leg that needed to be stitched up. she recognizes that she saved Jinshi, and she's like, Jinshi, what are you doing here? And then she passes out, and Jinshi picks her up and carries her out of the building. So this next part of the anime, there's a lot of different thoughts about the reasoning why LaKan was standing there looking the way he was as Jinshi carried her out of the building and down the path and taking her to get medical help. My thoughts were first may have been because he was able to see her face to face. So when he came up behind her and he said those words, he didn't actually see her, but he knew she was hurt. He was actually able to see her face and see how extremely hurt she was. And then also she was at that point, she was unconscious. So that could be part of the reason why he looked the way that he did, as well as Jinshi was carrying her. Now, of all the people that are around Jinshi, except for a few like really close individuals, know who he actually is. LaKan figured out who he was without being part of that inner circle. So he knows that Jinshi is truly the crown prince, which is the emperor's brother. Which anybody that watches the anime from the first couple of episodes, we already know that Jinshi is being portrayed as the younger brother, but Jinshi is actually the emperor's son. And we're not quite sure as of yet whether or not the emperor knows that's his son or not, or if Jinshi knows that he's the emperor's son instead of his brother. But I digress. We go back to the story about LaKan. But LaKan knows that he is the crown prince. So the importance of Mao Mao being carried by the crown prince is letting everyone know that Jinshi is taking claim of her and that she belongs to him. And she is a very important individual. And that right there, as a person in power at that time in that setting, is a very, very a strong statement. As well as I also thought about the fact that later on in the anime, whenever Mao Mao and LaKan are playing a game, he was pretty upset about the fact that Jinshi touched her shoulder twice during the game. So he may have been upset as well that Jinshi had his hands on his daughter and was actually carrying his daughter. So those are the things that I think could possibly be the reasons for his facial expressions. And then at that time, you never know if all of those things could have been going on in his head or many things, but those are just my thought process about the reasons why he has such a strong expression on his face. Also, later on, after they had that game between LaKan and Mao Mao, and LaKan lost. He lost a bet with Mao Mao, and he either Mao Mao would lose, and then she would have to go and stay with LaKan, which Jinshi was totally against. Or if she won, Mao Mao said that he would have to go to the verdigris house and buy out a courtesan. So he lost. So he's at the courtesan at the verdigris house, and he's getting ready to purchase a courtesan. And right before he picks Mei Mei, which he wants to pick her because she's been faithful and loyal as he visited the verdigris house over the years. And she was like, well, wait a minute. And she opened the doors, and he hears a familiar voice singing. Well, it is Mao Mao's mom. And he, for reasons, he thought she was dead, but she was alive. So he ran and he told the old madam who ran the verdigris house that he wanted to purchase her. At that time, Mao Mao's mother was extremely sick. So that's where it kind of goes into this whole story. We do get the story a little bit before that about how Mao Mao and LaKan's, Mao Mao's mom and LaKan meet, and they actually really loved each other. And Mau Mau's mother, according to Mau Mau, knew what she was doing, and she chose to get pregnant. And that was her way of decreasing the value of herself in order for LaKan to have enough money to purchase her out. And unfortunately, it didn't work that way. LaKan was sent away by his father, who at the time was the head of the Law clan, and he was gone for many years. So by the time he was back, Mau Mau was, I think, about 3, and then her mother had contracted a bad illness from her work at the Verdigris house, because she was no longer just an individual selling her talents. She had to take on customers now. So she contracted an illness, a sexually transmitted disease, which now in modern days is curable, but back then it wasn't. And she at the time was very, very ill. So LaKan, he picked her, Mau Mau's mom, and chose to purchase her, which the madam did allow. And they went off and enjoyed their long honeymoon. They didn't go into details about what was happening during their honeymoon or anything like that. I think later on it was stated that she had passed away a little while after that, but I'm not quite sure about that, because I know the light novel has a different version of the story as well. So the light novel and the manga kind of goes in different paths when it comes down to the stories, but nonetheless, Mau Mau continues her travels and breaking down different clues and puzzles and things, and finds herself getting kidnapped. And then finally, when LaKan finds out that she's been kidnapped, he goes to Jinshi and demands that Jinshi uses his power to bring down the traitors as well as rescue his daughter. He was asking Jinshi in not a very nice manner. And then LaKan's uncle comes in and intervenes and kind of helps bring down the heated conversation to where it's a little bit more tamed. LaKan's uncle is actually the one who raised and took care of Mau Mau, and who Mau Mau calls her actual dad. So Mau Mau's dad, that she calls a dad, is actually her biological uncle. So after LaKan listens to his uncle's advice, he does bow to Jinshi, which is a very huge gesture, which kind of takes everyone back, and he asked for him again to use his power to take down the traitor as well as, rescue Mau Mau. And he called him out. He at that time, he didn't just throw hints out that he knew exactly who he was. He told him he knew who he was. He called him the Moon Prince. And at that time, Jinshi stood up, and he pretty much, I guess, acknowledged that and went to work. So Jinshi does eventually goes into battle and rescues Mau Mau. And according to those on the side who are speaking to Mau Mau, they let them know that pretty much the reason why LaKan was not there to rescue her himself is because he threw his back out. So old man was out on the front lines trying to rescue his daughter, but he didn't quite make it all the way there. But this is one character that I feel like he was written very, very well. He was introduced into the story. I think it was very much intentional for everyone to view him as a evil person, a not so very good person, and then to get his backstory and then fully understand who he is. It makes you take back everything that you thought about LaKan. So LaKan was viewed as this shady person with questionable behavior towards women, to an actual sweet guy who fell in love with a girl, and some misfortunes happened between those two that prevented them from being together and raising their small little family together. But it it's pretty awesome to see that he was able to even be around Mau Mau, but then Mau Mau has questionable feelings about LaKan, which I'm not going to get into. But hopefully you all enjoyed the video, and come back to check another video later. And thank you again for dropping by, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.